The real reason why dark chosen ones take longer to rise, rare truth. Let me begin by saying something that most people will never understand. If you feel like your life has been delayed, then if you've watched others rise while you've been stuck in obscurity, if you've lost everything more than once and still can't seem to arrive, you're not cursed. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're a dark chosen one, and we take longer to rise for a reason so profound, so rarely spoken, that when you hear it, something ancient inside you will awaken. Because the truth is, you weren't sent here for a quick win. You were sent here for a revolution. And revolutions require preparation that the average soul will never be able to endure. You see, there's a reason why your story doesn't look like theirs, why you've had to heal in silence, why you've been left behind, even when your heart was pure, why you've been attacked for simply existing, why your light, though still buried, has drawn enemies before you even stepped into your full power. It's because you were never meant to rise the easy way. The easy way belongs to those who are here to maintain the system. You, on the other hand, were sent to dismantle it. But before you can do that, you must be trained in a way that breaks you down to your very core, strips you of every false identity, and teaches you how to command power in the dark.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Dark chosen ones are not evil. We are forged in the unseen. We carry ancient codes, soul contracts that reach beyond this lifetime. We remember things we were never taught. We feel things others can't. And because of that, our training is far more intense, far more mysterious, and far more delayed. God delays us not to punish us, but to preserve us, to protect the potency of our mission. Because if we rose too soon, we would be devoured by the systems we were meant to disrupt. We would be celebrated for our image, but crucified for our truth. And so, we are hidden. Not because we're unworthy, but because we are too valuable to be revealed at the wrong time. There are layers to this delay. Let's talk about the first one, density. Dark chosen ones carry dense karmic weight. We're not just healing ourselves, we're clearing ancestral lines, breaking generational spells, dissolving collective illusions. But that takes time. That takes spiritual stamina. We go through cycles that feel endless, not because we're slow, but because we're deep. While most people are skimming the surface of their lives, we are diving into the underworld of our psyche, facing demons, integrating shadows, transmuting pain into power. It's messy, it's non-linear, and it's necessary. Because when we rise, we don't just rise for ourselves, we rise on behalf of entire bloodlines. The second layer is resistance. Not just resistance from within, but resistance from the world. Systems don't welcome disruptors. People don't welcome mirrors. And that's what we are, mirrors. Just by existing, we expose what others are hiding. We trigger dormant truths. We shake stagnant rooms. And because of that, we are often rejected before we are ever recognized. If you've ever been the black sheep, the scapegoat, the one who didn't fit in, then you know exactly what I mean. That rejection isn't a flaw, it's a sign. It means your energy is already doing the work, even if your platform hasn't arrived yet. The third layer is mastery. God doesn't just want us to be gifted. He wants us to be masters of those gifts. That means we don't just get spiritual downloads, we are forced to live them, to embody them, to bleed through them. While others are preaching from books, we are preaching from scars. While others are teaching from borrowed wisdom, we are teaching from lived truth. And that level of authenticity, it can't be rushed. It can't be faked. It can't be mass-produced. It's earned through loss, through silence, through initiation after initiation that no one claps for. And then there's the final layer, the one most people never talk about: timing. Divine timing is not your timing. And that's hard to accept when your ego is screaming for results, for recognition, for relief. But here's what I've learned: God delays us because He's aligning the world to receive us. If you showed up in your full power before the world was ready, you would be ignored, or worse, misunderstood and silenced. So instead, He makes you wait, while He moves pieces behind the scenes, while He awakens your audience, while He clears the path, so that when you finally arrive, it's not forced, it's fated. So let me ask you something that only your soul can answer. What if the thing you've been calling a delay is actually divine protection? What if the years you spent in the dark were not wasted, but woven with sacred design? What if the reason you're taking longer to rise is because when you do rise, you won't just change your life, you'll change realities? Because that's who the dark chosen ones are. We are not here for the spotlight. We are here for the shift. And that kind of shift takes time to prepare. The hidden curriculum, why your pain was actually sacred training. There are lessons that can't be taught in classrooms, wisdom that can't be downloaded from books or podcasts or mentors. There's a depth of knowing that only comes from pain, the kind of pain that breaks your identity into pieces and forces you to rebuild from the ground up. And for dark chosen ones, this isn't just a chapter of life, it's the entire curriculum. You weren't just being hurt, you were being trained. You weren't just losing, you were being sharpened. And the world saw your struggles as setbacks, but in truth, they were your sacred syllabus. Because God doesn't train His rarest warriors through traditional means. He teaches us through what we survive. The pain you went through wasn't random. It was language, a coded transmission from the divine. Every betrayal was a test in discernment. Every abandonment was a lesson in self-trust. But every rejection was a confrontation with your own worth. And when you didn't run from the pain, when you sat with it, breathed through it, stayed present in it, you activated a level of spiritual intelligence most people never touch. Not because you wanted to, but because you had no other choice. That's how dark chosen ones are forged. Not in light, but in shadow. Not through comfort, but through chaos. You were trained in silence. You were trained in isolation. You were trained through the weight of invisible battles that no one else could see. While others were chasing validation, you were learning how to stand alone. While others were numbing themselves with noise, you were learning how to listen to your inner voice in the stillness. And that voice, it's not just your intuition, it's your God frequency. And the reason you can hear it so clearly now is because pain stripped away everything that wasn't real. Pain didn't destroy you, it refined your signal. And here's the wildest part: your deepest suffering became the container for your highest wisdom. That heartbreak you thought would crush you, it taught you boundaries. That loss you thought you'd never recover from, it taught you presence. That season where everything fell apart, it taught you who you really are when there's nothing left to pretend with. That's why your rise takes longer. Because you're not just being called to teach or lead, you're being called to embody truth. Not the kind you recite, but the kind you are. You've probably wondered why people are drawn to your energy even when you're not trying. Why strangers feel safe telling you their darkest truths. It's not an accident. It's because your aura speaks the language of pain transmuted into power. Without saying a word, you radiate, "I've been through the fire, and I didn't come out empty, I came out eternal." And that kind of frequency can't be faked. It only comes from walking through hell and deciding to keep your heart open anyway. The hidden curriculum of your life was never meant to make sense to others. That's why it looked like you were falling behind. That's why people misjudged you. They saw a delay, but they didn't see the depth. They saw failure, but they didn't see the formation. They saw silence, but they didn't hear the sacred instructions being whispered to your soul while the world was sleeping on you. And now you're waking up not just to your power, but to your purpose. You're realizing that the pain wasn't punishment. It was precision. It was preparation for a kind of role that very few are qualified to carry. And the most powerful part, you didn't just survive. You learned. That's what separates you from the rest. You didn't let the bitterness consume you. You didn't let the wounds define you. You let pain become your teacher. And because of that, you now hold keys most people aren't even aware exist. Keys to healing, to seeing, to leading. This is why your voice matters. This is why your presence shifts rooms. This is why your story, yes, the exact one you thought disqualified you, is actually your credential. So let me ask you something that only the deepest part of you can answer. What if the very experiences you were ashamed of are the exact ones that qualify you to do what no one else can? What if your pain was the degree you never knew you were earning? Because now you don't just have knowledge. You have authority. Not just to speak but to transmit. Not just to inspire but to activate. Why the world fears your rise and why it tried to stop you first. There's something that happens when a dark chosen one begins to remember who they are. The moment you stop apologizing for your depth, the moment you stop shrinking to fit in rooms not built for your energy, the moment you begin to walk not with arrogance, but with presence, that moment is when the world starts to tremble. Because your rise isn't just personal, it's disruptive. Your energy doesn't just inspire, it exposes. And what the world fears most isn't your power. It's your clarity. Clarity slices through illusions, but clarity breaks spells. Clarity awakens the sleeping. And once you awaken, you become dangerous to systems, to hierarchies, to illusions that are built on people staying silent, small and scared. This is why the world tried to stop you early. It saw your light before you did. It saw your potential before you were old enough to understand it. So it attacked you through people who were supposed to protect you. It wounded you through rejection. It programmed you through fear. It tried to convince you to abandon your path before you even discovered it. Because if it could keep you confused, it could keep you contained. And for a while it worked. You doubted yourself. You questioned your worth. You let others define your reality. But deep down, something never gave in. A spark remained. A whisper persisted. And now that whisper is turning into a roar. You see, there's a reason why your presence has always stirred reactions. Why you've been misunderstood, misjudged, even hated often by people who barely knew you. It's not because you were doing anything wrong. It's because your energy was already doing the work. You were mirroring the parts of others they were avoiding. You were radiating a truth they were not yet ready to face. And when people can't control your light, they try to dim it. When they can't define you, they try to discredit you. That's not a reflection of your failure, it's confirmation of your frequency. But the world doesn't fear followers. It fears free thinkers. It fears those who question everything, but those who refuse to play the game. Those who remember their divinity in a system designed to keep them dependent. But that's you. That's why your rise has been delayed. Not because you're weak, but because your awakening is a threat to everything false. Imagine what would happen if more people like you stopped waiting for permission and started walking in purpose. Imagine what would happen if those with ancient wisdom, spiritual authority, and intuitive knowing stopped hiding and started embodying. The very fabric of this reality would shift, and that's exactly why the resistance has been so strong. But here's the deeper truth. They weren't afraid of your power itself. They were afraid you'd realize you had it. Because the moment a dark chosen one realizes their own power, they can't be manipulated anymore. They can't be guilted into staying small. They can't be bribed with approval. They can't be seduced by fame, success, or influence. Because they've already danced with the darkness and survived. They've already faced their worst fears and found God in the silence. And that kind of soul is incorruptible. This is why your journey has been so intense, why your lessons had to go so deep. Because you weren't just being prepared to shine, you were being prepared to withstand. To stand in rooms where your truth would make people uncomfortable. To speak words that would trigger resistance. To carry a frequency so high it would collapse anything false in its presence. You were never meant to blend in. You were designed to restructure. And that's a responsibility that can't be rushed. And now, the world is watching. Some are watching in awe, some in fear, some in silent hope that maybe, just maybe, if you rise they can too. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to stay aligned. Because your rise isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving your soul right. It's about fulfilling the contract you made before you even came here. The one where you agreed to wake up, rise up, and light up the path for others. Not through perfection, but through authenticity. So I want to ask you something that will echo in the deepest part of your being. What illusion has the world convinced you to play along with, just so you wouldn't become the version of you that can't be controlled? Because when you see through that illusion, when you finally break the spell, you'll realize something powerful. The world never had power over you. It only had distraction. And now that your eyes are open, you can't go back. You were never meant to be accepted. You were meant to be remembered. The point of no return, why you can't unbecome who you're meant to be. There comes a moment in every dark, chosen one's journey where everything changes, not because something outside of you shifts, but because you do. It's not loud, there's no announcement, no applause, just a quiet, irreversible realization you've crossed a threshold. You can't go back. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't unsee your own light. You've been through too much, lost too much, endured too much to return to a version of yourself that was built on survival. That version of you served its purpose. It got you here, but now it's time to live as who you really are. The point of no return is terrifying for some, because it means there's no more hiding, no more pretending, no more playing small so others feel safe. But for those of us who are truly ready, it's liberation. Because when you reach this point, you stop negotiating with your destiny. But you stop asking for permission to be powerful. You stop shrinking to fit into narratives that were never written for someone like you. You realize that all the pain, all the delay, all the isolation was not in vain. It was sacred preparation for the emergence of your authentic self. And once you become that version of yourself, you can't go back into the box they built for you. It doesn't fit anymore. The language of your soul has evolved. Your energy won't tolerate old environments. Your body will reject low-frequency spaces. Your spirit will scream in protest at anything that dishonors your truth. This isn't ego, it's alignment. This is what it means to be awakened, but not spiritually trendy, but spiritually anchored, clear, unshakable, unapologetic. But here's the paradox. Once you become who you're meant to be, you'll lose a lot. You'll lose people who only knew the old you. You'll lose opportunities that were only available to your unawakened self. But you'll lose attachments, illusions, distractions. And at first, it might feel like regression. But it's not. It's refinement. God doesn't remove anything you need, only what you've outgrown. And when He starts clearing space, it's because something greater is coming. The version of you that's emerging doesn't just need more, it needs better, deeper, truer, real. This is where you live differently. You walk into rooms and you're no longer seeking to be liked, you're reading the energy. You speak and people pause not because you're loud, but because your words carry weight. You start attracting connections that honor your soul, not your mask. You stop chasing love, success, validation because you realize those things are natural byproducts of being who you are without compromise. And yes, it's lonely at first. The mountain always is. But eventually you look around and realize you're not actually alone. You're surrounded by others who also chose the path of no return. Souls who've been through the fire. Souls who carry codes. Souls who see you without explanation. This is your true tribe. Not the ones who tolerated the old you, but the ones who honor the real you. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you've remembered who you are, what are you willing to walk away from to protect it? Because the real rise doesn't happen when people finally see you. It happens when you finally see yourself and refuse to unsee it ever again. That's the power of the dark chosen one. We don't rise for fame. We rise because we must. Because the world needs what we carry. And because we made a promise to God, long before this life began, that we would become no matter what it cost. And now you have. Welcome to the point of no return.